Hello and welcome. I'm so glad that you have joined me here today. Today we are looking at Nehemiah chapter 12. So grab yourself a cuppa and we'll get started. So Nehemiah chapter 12 is really about the priests and the Levites. And so there is a whole section, 26 verses, where Nehemiah mentions all these priests and the Levites by name. And so I won't be going through and reading all of them out. But the Levites were Israelites from the tribe of Levi, and the tribe was chosen by God to care for the temple and guide the people in worshipping God. The Levites had many responsibilities in life and worship of Israel, and one of their jobs was to lead the people in songs of worship and praise to God. So all the temple priests, they all needed to be descendants from Aaron, the brother of Moses, who was a Levite. It was the law that only a Levite from the line of Aaron was to serve as priest. We can see that in Nehemiah chapter 7, verses 64. And some Levites, because they'd lost the records when they had gone to exile in Babylon, some of these records, historical records, family records, genealogy records had been lost. So in Nehemiah 7 verse 64, they said they searched for their family records, but they could not find them. And so they were excluded from the priesthood as unclean. So a lot of the Levites were searching for their family history to prove really that they were descendants from Aaron's line, but they couldn't find them. So they weren't able to serve as priests. So perhaps Nehemiah was endeavouring to create this accurate record of genealogy and ancestry to prove the authenticity of those from the tribe of Levi that was serving as priests. So this is possibly why this chapter was written and this very comprehensive list of names is documented. So from verse 1 down to verse 21 and even really more to 26 is really just sort of naming, recording, documenting the families and the names of those who are Levites. So I won't read that out. We'll jump down to in chapter 12 verse 27. So this section, it deals with the dedication of the walls of Jerusalem, which relates back to chapter 7 in Nehemiah. So at the dedication of the wall, this is verse 27, at the dedication of the wall of Jerusalem, the Levites were sought out and they sought out from where they lived and were brought to Jerusalem to celebrate joyfully the dedication with song and thanksgiving, with the music of the cymbals, the harps and the lyres. So verse 27 talks about dedicating the wall. It was an act of consecrating this rebuilt structure to God, acknowledging that it was only rebuilt so quickly and so rapidly because God had favour, and it wasn't about just the mere effort and dedication of the workers and the human effort. It was that God had his hand on this project right from the beginning, and you can see that right from chapter 1 through the whole of Nehemiah, that it was divinely supported by God. And it also mentions the instruments that the Levites used. And you can also see this list of instruments in Solomon's dedication of the temple back in 2 Chronicles 5:13. He used the same instruments. Verse 28, the musicians were also brought together from the regions of Jerusalem and from the villages of a town I can't pronounce, and from Beth Gilgal and from the area of Geba and Azomath, and from the musicians were built villages for themselves around Jerusalem, and where the priests and the Levites had purified themselves ceremonially, and they had purified the people and the gates and the wall. So Nehemiah then establishes 2 choirs, one to worship and they were both to worship and to give thanks to God. And each choir was followed by half of the leaders and half of the inhabitants of Jerusalem. And there were also specifically appointed singers. Maybe they had a good voice. Since the job of these singers was to lead the people in worship of God, they also didn't have to be just good singers, but more importantly, they had to be people of worship themselves. They needed to have the right heart to serve and to lead the people in worship, to be people of integrity, really. There was a huge difference between being a good singer and being a great leader of worship. Worship could be excellent, and it really should be excellent, but it isn't entertainment. The goal isn't to give people a good feeling, although this may happen, but it is to give glory and honour to God and to encourage others to do the same. Verse 31, I had the leaders of Judah go up on the top of the wall, and I also assigned 2 large choirs to give thanks. One was to proceed on the top of the wall to the right toward the dung gate, and Hosea and half of the leaders of Judah followed them, along with, there's a list of names there, and then there is a second choir, verse 38, that proceeds in the opposite direction. So you've got the walls around Jerusalem, and you've got 2 choirs that are going in separate directions, and that they are going to meet on the other side of Jerusalem. Verse 40, the 2 choirs that gave thanks then took their place in the house of God. And so I, Nehemiah, he's referring to himself, together with half of the officials as well as the priests, this is the whole name of priests, and the choirs sang under the direction of Jezariah. And that day they offered great sacrifices. Rejoicing because God had given them great joy. The women and the children also rejoiced, and the sound of the rejoicing in Jerusalem could be heard far away. And so God had made them rejoice with great joy, and they were so overwhelmed with joy and thanksgiving because of everything that God had done. The women and the children, they also rejoiced, and it was a tremendous experience of worship for everyone, the old, the young, male, female, no matter what status, no matter what station. No one was excluded from participating in this worship. And the joy in Jerusalem, it was heard far away, and it must have been such a loud noise. In Psalms 98 verse 4, it says, shout for joy to the Lord of all the earth. And the Hebrew word for shout really means to give a blast, to make a loud noise. And so their worship was a testimony to others, and to not just the singing itself, but how joyful they were because of what God had done, and all glory was due to him. Verse 44. At that time, men were appointed to be in charge of the storerooms for the contributions, the first fruits and the tithes. And from the fields from around the towns, they were to bring to the storerooms the portions required by the law of the priests of the Levites. For Judah was pleased to be ministering to the priests and the Levites. They performed the service of God and the service of purification, as did all the musicians and the gatekeepers, according to the commands of David and his son Solomon. For long ago, in the days of David and Aspar, they had been given directors of music, and for the songs of the praise and thanksgiving to God. And so these days of Zerubbabel and of Nehemiah, all Israel contributed daily portions to the musicians and to the gatekeepers, and they also set aside portions to the Levites, and the Levites set aside portions to the descendants of Aaron. And so the people of Judah took care of the physical needs of the priests and the Levites by re-establishing a structured system of tithes and offerings and contributions. That's the first fruits. And so they appointed several overseers. So these were specific, trustworthy men they put in charge of the temple storehouses to receive and to manage and to secure the tithes and offerings. And they had made daily provisions for the workers, for the Levites, for the musicians, and for the gatekeepers. That was their job. That was their role, so they needed to be compensated for the time they spent on that. The reason why the Levites were taken care of by the rest of the Israelites was because Judah was pleased. It says in the Bible that Judah was pleased with ministering to the priests and the Levites. This is in verse 44. The Israelites were thankful. They were delighted that the Levites were fully and constantly ministering on behalf of all the people of Israel. And in gratitude, they were more than happy to support them by providing for their physical needs. And I guess that's where our heart should be today as we give money to our congregation, or to give money as the Lord puts on our heart, that we should give joyfully. We should give with a joyful heart to support those who minister to us. And don't do it begrudgingly, like it says in 2 Corinthians 9 verse 7. Now, usually it's all the upfront people that get recognition, isn't it? But Nehemiah, he singles out those who faithfully serve God by supporting roles, including the storeroom people and the gatekeepers. And so this just reveals Nehemiah's heartfelt appreciation and his genuine gratitude And he really is a considerate and a compassionate man. It's lovely to see this list that he knew these people individually and he cared for them, and he was very grateful that they had helped out to support all the people of Israel. So that's all I have from Nehemiah chapter 12. I hope you join me next week when we cover our very last chapter of Nehemiah, Nehemiah chapter 13. We will see you then. Bye.